super cool intro. What's up guys, Monty428 here, back with another Borderlands video, and today I want to cover the newly released encyclopedia, The World of Borderlands. This book's description reads that this is a bombastic guide to Pandora, its surrounding planets, and the characters who live there. This volume is filled with art and trivia relating to the guns, vehicles, ships, companies, and adventurers of the world-spanning universe, and the monstrous fauna who would eat all of them. So, it's basically an encyclopedia of everything Borderlands. Presented by Gearbox and Dark Horse Books, I'm going to treat everything written in here as canon to the franchise. I love these kinds of books and appreciate the thoroughness of detail that they take from every inch of their source materials, being only the games in this case. Although, I tracked one detail belonging to the Borderlands Game of the Year Signature Series Strategy Guide, which I didn't know existed, and so I don't know if there are other takeaways from that, but maybe some of the BL1 details I'll be discussing are actually from there. There will be some things that I can't pin as being explicitly stated in the games, which could just be my lack of omniscience and forgetfulness, so there may be points in this video where you say, hey, I did know that actually, but I'd like to think you won't. I did my best to research such questions, and so hopefully everything I cover here will be new information to you. That would mean that Gearbox would have had to okay certain details being added, which is my primary reason for making this video. There's nothing in this book that is going to blow your socks off like, oh my god, is this real? Or, I can't believe that they added this secret. Yeah, nothing like that. It's mostly just little neat fan service things that add to the depth of the already massive universe, and none of it's cringe, thankfully. This is a W Gearbox product. It should be noted that this encyclopedia is written in-universe by an unknown person. I initially thought that this was Rick Barba, but this is actually just the real author, who apparently is 75 years old, so big ups to this guy. With that being said though, there's always a possibility that the in-universe writer does get something wrong, but you know, like, I don't know why they would intentionally put falsities in such a book, so I'm going to treat everything as canon. Last thing here, whenever I mention editor's notes, I don't mean the writer's editor. These are just notes from the in-universe writer that are made in post. So just know that it's the same person giving all the info when I mention the editor's notes. So just know that it's the same person giving all of the info when I mention editor's notes. I will leave timestamps below for the main categories of trivia that I will be covering, starting with info that is actually important to the state of the franchise's lore, and then getting into more fun facts. So feel free to jump around the video for whatever interests you the most, or just watch it all the way through. Anyways, let's get started. With help from Dr. Tanis, all of Nereid's passed down knowledge from BL3 regarding Sirens and Eridians is set on a timeline throughout the first couple of pages. There isn't anything new here, but it's nice to have this set timeline to refer back to for anything that is needed to know. I'm sure Eruption Fang is going to love this one. On page 19 there is a section dedicated to the Watcher, which conveniently mentions the Watcher's famous warning of war at the end of the pre-sequel, adding that war did indeed come, but it remains unclear whether its prophecy referred to the Vault Hunters' subsequent conflict with the COV, or perhaps hints at some darker war yet to come. Really, Gearbox? I'd like to think they aren't that stupid and will, at least 10 years later, finally deliver on one of the most wanted storylines that they've teased, because there's no way BL3 was what the Watcher's warning was about. Something to note is that the Watcher is referred to as an Eridian Guardian here, but then on page 68 it is referred to as an ancient Eridian entity. Obviously the in-universe writer doesn't know what it is, but surely Gearbox would want to be careful with how they label the Watcher. This is one of the instances I was referring to in regards to the in-universe writer possibly being wrong, and so we can't take these descriptions as canon. Not that this really reveals anything, because obviously he's just speculating, but I think you get what I mean. On page 26 we have real confirmation here that Elpis is indeed missing. It makes me wonder if Randy's tweet was a preliminary tease to this book because he knew that there would be mentions of this, or if he really did just see Morning After Kill's video on the subject. The book also says that Today you can see Lilith's Firehawk sigil emblazoned in the sky where Elpis used to be. Now I know that I'm not the only one who always thought that Elpis was this circle in the sky, and that Lilith probably incinerated anyone still living on Elpis, as recent discourse has shown that this is what most people thought to be the case. But yeah, this is Ring of Fire is just like there forever now, somehow. Skipping to page 71, which is the end of the Universal Timeline, it is noted that this book is being written 6 months after the events of BL3. An editor's note here seems to acknowledge the sentiment that Elpis was not missing, so either this is a joke meant to make us feel better about our seeming stupidity, or it's to make up for Gearbox's strange decision to put that there. I mean, they obviously didn't just add this after Randy's tweet. This book has been in development for a while, but, you know, it's just weird. It's like, I think everyone is confused by this. And finally, on page 81, Lilith's personal history record explains that Lilith was last seen levitating towards Elpis, after which she and the moon both disappeared, leaving only her Firehawk sigil emblazoned across the Pandoran sky. Some believe she teleported Elpis somewhere else in space and time. Others think she phased the moon entirely out of existence, sacrificing herself in the process. As of this writing, nobody knows for sure. The Universal Timeline is a great addition that gives us not dates, but how many years ago important events happened, like the corporate wars, Typhon's discoveries, all of the game's main storyline events, and more. There isn't much need to go over every single event on this timeline, but if you're a diehard lore enthusiast, you'll love how much love it was put into crafting it, and I'm sure that someone like Eruption Fang is going to make a much better and in-depth video covering all of it. Much better than I can do anyways. Two particular events that I want to point out, however, are about the corporate wars and about the Calypsos. So, 71 years ago, quote, after decades of bloody, genocidal fighting, the tide fully turns against the central government at a decisive engagement, during which an entire galactic expeditionary force is eviscerated by a molecular disruptor accident. That was a lot of words. Continuing now. Within weeks, the corporate alliance declares a glorious victory and starts divvying up star sectors. Mega corporations are now the governing forces across the inhabited regions. Corporate executives become regional governors. Some rule more like feudal lords. And this editor's note mentions, the molecular disruptor industry briefly enjoys a surge in stock value as wide-eyed militaries speculate on the potential of a phenomenal new class of weapon, until investors realize that no one has any idea how to replicate the incident and the price plummets, capsizing the industry with it. I feel like that's a pretty important event that I've never heard about until reading this, and I wonder if it is just a cool throwaway piece of knowledge, or if such knowledge could be brought up again in BL4. Just food for thought. Let's get right into this one. The Jack AI from Tales of the Borderlands. Does the book mention it? Yes. It brings up the fact that Rhys had the Jack AI in his head, but only because Rhys says so in Tales. I specifically remember that one scene where the crew is driving in the snowy area and you're given the option to be truthful about it. If I'm remembering correctly, that is, but I guess it becomes a known fact anyways, so it doesn't matter, but Rhys isn't the only one that knows about it, that's the point. However, Rhys is the only one who knows about what happened in Jack's office, and the in-universe writer makes no mention of the possibility that Jack's AI could still be accessed, because, again, Rhys is the only one that knows. So no, they don't talk about it. There is absolutely zero mention of Athena being the CEO of Hyperion. Thankfully, there are no mention of new tales whatsoever, which makes me hopeful that that whole game is not canon, but there's always the possibility that New Tales was excluded from this book because it was in development before the game even came out. I was starting to wonder if all the release delays were due to info from New Tales being added, but that is not the case. While it is great that I don't have to suffer through reading about New Tales, it also leaves a lot of questions still to be answered about its story. There is no mention of what Athena is currently up to. It does mention her relationship with Janie, but not in a chronological sense. It just mentions that Athena loves her. And so, this really makes me question what Gearbox's intentions are with Athena's character. On almost all of the profile sections for the Vault Hunters, there are clear mentions of their current whereabouts, such as Brick and Mordecai joining the B team, others being dead, Claptrap being on Sanctuary 3, etc. I'd imagine if Gearbox really did make Hyperion's gimmick in relation to Athena for BL3, they would be fine with asserting her as the CEO at this point and in this book, like they alluded to in New Tales. But the writer just doesn't say anything past the original Tales story. It just stops. Maybe the backlash got to Gearbox and they actually do intend on retconning New Tales, I pray. Because, be for real about this idea for a second, like, it really feels like low-hanging fruit for Athena to be the CEO just because she has a shield. Like, they just connected that dot themselves and were like, yeah, that makes sense, let's put Athena in New Tales for that. But Jesus Christ, I've said New Tales like 20 times already, and that's 20 times too much, so let's end this section right here. Alright, Fiona and Sasha. I'm sure this is another highly anticipated section here. So, quote, despite this journalist's best efforts, Fiona's whereabouts since entering the vault cannot be substantiated. Also, quote, apparently Sasha went dark after the vault incident. None of Reese's contacts nor mine have located her since. Also, quote, when contacted for comment regarding the vault's contents, Reese Strongfork replied, well, if you don't know, I'm not gonna tell you. It is also mentioned that Zero helped Reese search for one of his former female partners, but which one, Fiona or Sasha, Reese refuses to say. We are getting that book about Fiona, I think, sometimes, so I guess we just gotta wait for that. Did you really think that we get actual insight on what Zero is? You fool. Of course, the writer mentions the tennis excerpt from the, quote, off-cited issue of the Pandoran Gazette, but all they add is that, quote, the only solid fact known about Zero is his precise height of 0.0193 hectometers. I don't know why they use that measurement, but that's 2.11 yards, which is 75.96 inches, which is 6 foot 3 inches tall. Sounds about right. It's true, Boom and Boom are their real names. The year they were born, the Torgue Corporation ran a promotion promising free grenades for any child literally named Boom. Unfortunately for the elder Bewm, it was a radio ad, and Boom's parents couldn't spell very well. Speaking of Torgue, did you know that, quote, when Torgue moved with his family to Pandora, he promptly lost both parents to an iridium mine explosion? In parentheses, he was raised by Grandma Flexington. Many speculate that this tragic event triggered his obsession with explosive energy. As a young man, he designed a number of guns and started his company, end quote. Now, I think you might be able to see right off the bat why that makes no sense. Iridium did not start popping up until after the events of Borderlands 1, when the Torgue Corporation already existed. On the Torgue weapons page, it states that Torgue is a more recent addition to the galaxy's gun manufacturing community, and does confirm that Mr. Torgue is the founder. It also explains that the company once boasted an extensive selection of gun types in its products catalog, but in recent years, in keeping with the general company ethos, Torgue stopped manufacturing SMGs and sniper rifles, instead focusing on weapons that sacrifice precision for sheer explosive power. But regardless, since Iridium started appearing 13 years ago, I see this as an explanation for the gimmick change between BL1 and BL2, obviously, but it comes off more like Torgue was a kid when he lost his parents, because of the fact that it mentions he was raised by Grandma Flexington. Maybe it's just awkward wording, but it reads as more of a mistake to me. One of the two DLC villains who escaped the Vault Hunters, many people want to know what happened to Butcher Rose from DLC 3 and BL3. When opening the very hostile people section of the personnel files, the writer makes sure to start off by saying, here's a list of some more notable ones. Most are deceased. No, just kidding, all are deceased. On the very next page, however, Rose's section completely contradicts this, because the final section of her file says, Rose disappeared in the mayhem and has not been seen since. So, yeah, we still don't know. The other DLC villain who escaped the Vault Hunters, Captain Scarlett, is put into the less hostile people section of the personnel files. All it says about her in her file is that after finding the Leviathan, oddly enough, everything turned out well in the end. There's no mention of Grandma Flexington's story, which I thought would be a perfect gag to have the writer put in editor's note saying he had to listen to it, but no. It seems like the characters in this universe just don't care what happened to her. She was an ally, and even though she stabbed us in the back, all's well that ends well, it seems. Moving on to another badass DLC villain, Colonel Hector. He gets a crazy amount of lore exploration in his DLC by itself, but just one little detail in this book tells us that Moxie says Hector had vines growing from places the sun don't shine. I don't know how she knows that, but just something to keep in mind. Did you know that Bloodwing did not take HRT to transition from male to female? It turns out that this process is actually called protandrous sequential hermaphroditism, which is actually a real thing. I thought that was made up, but look it up, it's real. The last we saw GenIVIV, she was put into a hard drive and given to Marcus. In an editor's note, it states that normally such an arrangement would result in a Maliwan-sponsored bounty and a dead merchant in a very short order. However, somehow Marcus remains alive and in business. By way of cryptic explanation, he told me, "It's all about who you know and knowing their price." I think that's great showing of Marcus's character. For Commandant Steele, it just says that upon death, Steele's siren powers passed into the universe, and it also mentions that nobody knows what her powers were. So, still, to this day, we have no idea. Krom and Baron Flynt from Borderlands 1. This was definitely mentioned in BL1 or in the BL1 strategy book, because I found it on the wiki. But did you know that both Krom and Baron Flynt were prison wardens for Dahl's brigade of prisoners that were sent to Pandora? Krom's real name is Leslie, but he changed it and started wearing a mask when he was appointed as Baron's primary lieutenant for his gang, after Dahl abandoned the planet and released all of the prisoners. The editor's note explains that it's an open secret that at Dahl, embezzling a ton of guns and ammo and retiring to a life as a bandit lord on a hostile planet is a standard career track for many. It's so common, the retirement package is known in the company as the lead parachute. These notes are really insightful, man. I'm liking them a lot. Keeping it going with the BL1 characters, one of my all-time favorites, Sledge. Sledge came to Pandora as part of the Dahl Prisoners Brigade as well, being a prisoner himself, to work in the Headstone mines. This was the site of many strange mutations. Some miners died, some went insane, and most suffered truly grotesque physical mutations, transforming into huge, hulking man monsters, or conversely into vicious mini-goons. The convicts went on a wild rampage and broke out of the prison mining camps in a murderous surge of anarchy. Sledge himself was mutated into a uniquely powerful brute, and soon wrangled the raging mutant horde into a nice little criminal empire. This is an awesome explanation of that entire map's backstory that I just didn't know, but again, this is not new information. I just think it's great storytelling, and I believe Eridian was the cause of the mutations, especially because of that one mission where you can go back to the mines to blow up everything there, so they can't mine the iridium, even though iridium is spelled with an I and not an E. But yeah, it's so cool. Alright, so here we've got a double whammy of confirmation. On Moxie's page, the writer states that Jimbo Hodunk is the father of her 2 children, and then on Scooter's page, the first line starts with, son of Jimbo Hodunk and Moxie. Now, according to the wiki, he grudgingly admits that Jimbo Hodunk is his father during Borderlands 2, and on Jimbo's page, it says that he is mentioned as being Scooter's father. I don't know about you, but I've always been under the assumption that it's been an assumption who his father is, and it is never explicitly stated in the games. I'm not sure where the wiki is getting this information from, but I looked at a Reddit thread, and apparently in Borderlands 1, there is a Catcher-eyed voice line where Scooter says, "My dad, he always said that wheels was better than heels." he was paralyzed, though. You tell me how good that impression was. I don't think that was too bad. I highly suggest checking out this Reddit thread, though, because this person went through all of the voice lines to come to the conclusion that Jimbo is not only the father of Moxie's children, but also the father of Moxie herself. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Go check it out. TK motherfucking Baha. Now, this has to be my favorite inclusion in this book. In TK's personnel file, a special note says his last name spelled backwards is Ahab, which I'm sure has no significance whatsoever. Once again, the Borderlands wiki somehow had this information already, but I've literally never ever heard anybody talk about this, ever. So Ahab is a reference to Captain Ahab from the Moby Dick novel. Captain Ahab has a big-ass scar across his face, and he lost his leg to the legendary sperm whale Moby Dick. which became his nemesis that he vowed to get revenge on. This is such an awesome parallel to have the big-ass skag, Scar, be TK's Moby Dick. It killed his wife, voice crack, it killed his wife, and then it took his leg, and then as we know, he sends the Vault Hunters to go kill it. Also, the Ahab rocket launcher from Borderlands 2 has a red text that is also a reference to Moby Dick. Amazing storytelling, yet again. Now let's get into the lore of the creatures of Pandora. These are just going to be some interesting facts and trivia that really aren't important, but for me, every little detail is appreciated. Starting off on page 124 in the bestiary section, we can see 4 different winged animals. These are your Bloodwing-esque birds that are not seen in any of the games. I mentioned in the intro to this video that the Borderlands Game of the Year Signature Series Strategy Guide, I don't know why they named it that, but that introduced at least one detail that was not present in the games, and this is that detail. We can see in this picture that there's the Northern Common Wing, which is a bluish-purple hue, the Pandoran Trash Feeder, the Red-tailed Wing, and the Yellow-crested Wing. When I first saw these birds, I felt like I had seen them somewhere else before, but I think that's just a false memory that we'll never process. Anyways, the Pandoran Trash Feeder is my favorite because, just look at him, cool looking dude. Now I'm gonna rapidly fire off these next couple factoids just cause they're simple biological details. The standard adult bullymong is 6 to 8 feet tall and weighs 500 to 700 pounds. Crystallisks are not technically alive. They move, attack, and feel pain, but they have no brains to speak of, nor do they possess digestive, respiratory, or circulatory systems. A terrifying trait of skags is biological immortality. Provided enough food, skags never stop growing and don't seem to suffer any infirmities of age. Every so often a perfect storm of plentiful prey and lack of local competition leads to a mega skag specimen claiming miles of territory for their own. Helena Pierce also adds that scientists believe a skag will continue to grow throughout its entire life cycle. The primary food source of spider ants is pup skags. Threshers have a system of tunnels and a main lair that they burrow to, just like regular ants. Torques, which were insects on Elpis, are potentially extinct, or they are at least someone else's problem, which is a reference to the moon being phase-walked somewhere else. Larval varkids hatch from an egg mound, which is actually the protruding reproductive organ of an underground female varkid, but then they evolve on their own from there. The only note that I'm going to make from the vehicle section of this book is about the BL2 Caravan. Ellie says, "Don't know how bandits made a friggin' minivan that can take a bullet so well. Iridium-infused armor plates, maybe?" Which is pretty cool. The final section of the book, which is about the guns and gear of the franchise, is quite interesting. It displays some of the more popular weapons of each manufacturer and gives an in-universe description about how people view them. Right off the bat, though, we have a spelling error on the first item shown. Was the Neogenator supposed to be the Reogenator all along? I don't think so. Moving on, though. From these pictures, you can see that healing items and healing properties of weapons are actually canon in universe, such as the troll healing you when you shoot people. The Butcher supposedly has unique ammo regen nanotechnology, and the Infinity Pistol's infinite ammo loop is a mystery to everybody. The COV Yellow Cake Launcher is remarked as one of the most powerful handheld weapons in the 6 galaxies, and that development led to a multi-corporation conference to contest its availability. A consensus was reached that it was fine, as long as the bandits were only killing each other. But then the Vault Hunters got their hands on one, and corporations tightened restrictions on fissile material as to limit the potency of the Yellow Cake's scavenged components, weakening the final product. Great explanation for why it was nerfed in BL3. On the SNS munitions page, it is revealed... Oh, no, not revealed again. This was apparently known info from a BL3 radio ad, but I don't think many people know about this one. SNS munitions became SNS accessories, and that they are the reason why in-game when you see a gun on the floor, it has a light beam coming out of it. You know, the white, green, blue, purple legendary, etc. They're the ones that manufacture the light beams. That's pretty cool, actually. On TDOR's page, there is a line that reads, "In the inimitable words of former President and CEO Chet Smith, this is sweet," when referring to TDO rocket launchers. In BL3, you can actually find a poster of Chet Smith, but as we know, he was dropped for Susan. The notable product for TDR ARs is the Borderlands 1 Guardian, and I like the description for it because it reads, "When you buy a Guardian, the box that it comes in says, 'Hold your ground, forever.'" That is the red text of the Guardian, so this means that red texts are canonically the taglines for selling guns. I just love that so much. Taking a look at the Torgue products page, we seemingly get a cannon pellet count for the Unkempt Herald. The description reads, "Each round from an Unkempt Herald splits twice. That's one shot, 4 projectiles, all explosive as hell." When reading about the Kerblaster, it said that the Kerblaster series is one of the most devastating rifle lines in the history of gun manufacture. And I've gotta say, I love me a Kerblaster. What I haven't mentioned about the gun section of the book is that this entire section is written with the aid of Zane's knowledge, so here's a couple of weapons that Zane likes to use. If you follow JoltsDude on Twitter, you will likely have seen already that the GUB is one of Zane's go-to weapons. Zane prefers his weapons sleek and high-tech, but says that finishing a job with a chunky bandit GUB can throw corporate intel off his scent. Smart man. Zane also mentions that the BL1 Raven assault rifle is so finely calibrated that it almost fires for you. Another BL1 doll weapon, the Penetrator Sniper, is noted as one of Zane's favorite weapons. He considers it a real gun for the hardest of the hardcore. Personally, I'll never forget getting a Reaver's Edge Penetrator on my first run with Mordecai. Really fun gun. Looking at the Vladov section now, Zane notes that the Lyuda Sniper is particularly effective against monstrous targets where he can hit every pellet. And from spending some time on Elpis, Zane explains that if you hear the strange high squeal of its post-shot emittance in the distance, you're either dead or soon to be dead, when referring to Hyperion's longest yard laser railgun. That's another beautiful piece of weaponry right there. And ending this off with another BL1 classic, as specified by Zane, the Draco assault rifle is kept in his storage locker for special contracts. Gotta hand it to him. He really picks the best weapons out here. I mean, besides the Raven, that's whatever, but that's 5 out of 6 choice picks. We have to finish this video off with one final piece of trivia. Shade's death in Tales is not canon. I don't think it was ever confirmed or denied, but right here you can see that there is no mention of Shade being shot in his file, nor in Augustus' file. Shade is also referred to in the present tense, so Vault Hunters, rejoice. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope I was able to enlighten you all with at least one piece of unknown trivia here, so let me know down below what you didn't know, and what you think about all of the trivia. Also let me know which of the wings is your favorite, and be sure to like and subscribe if you aren't already part of the Monty clan. I've got some bangers in the factory waiting to be produced for my community, but regardless, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later.